do you sell a smoker's house in Concord, North Carolina? Now, first of all, you're thinking, but Leigh Brown, people still smoke? It's true that they do because it is an addictive substance, and frankly, it causes people to be highly productive, so some of them just never let go of the habit. And here in Cabarrus County, we do have a lot of folks who still smoke, and if you're thinking, well, that's awful, stay out of my comments and don't be ugly about it, because if you've never lived with addiction, you shouldn't be so rude about it. And here, we used to have one of our largest employers as Philip Morris. Right here in Concord on 29, they had a cigarette production facility, and I got to tour it in the 5th grade on a field trip. It was pretty fascinating to watch the cigarettes come down the line and get packaged up. Fascinating stuff. Those jobs have moved on because Philip Morris moved on. However, a lot of people here do still smoke. So when I'm in real estate, I may have to go into a home where there's been a lifelong smoker. Now, if you're not a smoker, you're thinking, but Leigh, I'll never have to deal with a smoker's house. You might, because if your mom and daddy smoked in the house and they pass on and you've got to sell the house, well, we're going to have to deal with that. And maybe your brother-in-law smoked all these years and he just didn't smoke around you, and he's moved on and asked you to handle his house. There's lots of reasons you may inherit a house or wind up being the one who's the problem solver for it. And that's what we're here for. We're going to solve what we have as options on that house. Now, the first thing you should know is that if we're going to talk about cigarettes, the reason it impacts your real estate, it's not just like cooking fish in the kitchen where it smells bad for a couple of days. That's when you get a lamp berger. It'll handle all that. But when you think about cigarette smoke, it's not just a smell in the air for a moment. There are substances in the smoke. The one that impacts your house the most is the tar. And tar, of course, goes into the paint, into the sheetrock, into the plaster, into the knotty pine paneling. It's in the walls. It goes into the carpet pad, into the subfloor. It's in the house. That's why these smells are so hard to deal with, and they get really frustrating, and I totally understand that. But you also got to know that in addition to your walls and your floors, it's getting into the furniture. So if there's couches and chairs in the house or anything that's a fabric, it's likely got that same smell to it. So when we're thinking about all of these pieces, the first thing I will tell you, first thing, you're dealing with a smoker's house, get all the stuff out. Sometimes the worst of the odor is coming from the furniture. So let's go ahead and get it out. And if it can be donated, maybe somebody will take it, but they may not because it's been in a smoker's house, in which case we'll call the junk guy and he will help us deal with it, because that is why your realtor has a list of great people and we have great options. Now, we got all the stuff out of the house. What do we do next? I will tell you, the next thing I suggest is to pull up the rugs. If you've got carpet in the house and carpet pad, let's get it out and start airing out the house and see what we're dealing with at that point. Now, when the subfloor gets exposed, it does actually air out okay, because most subfloor is not super dense. How do we do that? Well, you first of all open up all the windows and let the house naturally air out. And a great tip, get yourself some aluminum pans, or those full pans where you make a lasagna for the lady at the church whose husband passed, and put some charcoal briquettes in it, because charcoal is a natural absorbent and a natural neutralizer. And it's also a very inexpensive way. Put some of these around the house and then give the house a few days to breathe a little bit. Now, after it has breathed a little bit, we're still going to have to deal with it because the tar is often in the walls. And y'all, I have seen houses where you can physically see the drips on the wall from the tar. That's how long somebody had been smoking in the house. And so that's what tells us what we're going to have to do for remediation. It does not get you off the hook if you smoked in the house one time, though. We're still going to have to deal with it, but the level may be elevated. The first thing you should know is that paint is not enough. So don't think that you can go to Lowe's, get a can of paint, and Shazam, it's fixed. You're going to have to do Kilz first, and that's Kilz, and it may be 1 coat, 2 coat, 3 coats to help get the wall neutralized and start taking care of the odor. That's step 1. Now, after you've done the Kilz, then you can paint it to whatever color you like. I do recommend that you take some time in between the layers so the house has a chance to continue airing out. It is possible, friends. If the tar is so bad that it was dripping off the walls, you may have to pull the sheetrock because the cigarette smoke may be in the insulation. It can be a very extensive situation, but it's what we do. We deal with things and we make the house better so that somebody can buy it. Now, when it comes to the floors, I will generally recommend that if there are original hardwoods, after we've done the charcoal, we've gotten the fabrics up out of the house, do some refinishing, because it's amazing what will happen when we take off that top layer of poly, do a sand, and put on a fresh coat. Can do wonders for the house. Of course, don't forget your baseboards while you're down there dealing with the floors. The last place you want to take care of, and don't forget this, is to clean the ductwork, which is, of course, where the heat and air and the registers are all connected throughout the house. The tar can get in there too, and a professional duct cleaning can keep it from recirculating that same old smell, kind of like your favorite bowling alley where smoking hasn't been allowed for 25 years, but you still kind of smell the smoke a little bit when it circulates. A lot of that has to do with the ductwork and the heating and air. So there's ways to deal with it, and it will help your market value and it will shorten your market time. Now let's go back to the beginning when it comes to your choices. You're thinking about selling mom and daddy's house. They were lifelong smokers and you're just busy. You don't have the time, the bandwidth, or maybe your parent just passed and the grief is too much to add on the house. And so you say, you know what, Leigh Brown, let's sell it as is. Can I sell it as is? Yes, you can. But as your pro, I'm going to tell you that there's a couple of things to consider when selling as is. The first one is that your buyer pool is going to be diminished because you're busy. Well, so is your buyer. You don't want to fool with it. Neither does your buyer. So they may not be willing to take on a project house. The second reason your buyer pool may be diminished is folks like myself who are allergic to cigarette smoke. If I even walk up to the door, I will know it has been smoked in because I will flare up and I can't take on that project unless I really hire it out. So it's going to have to be super dirt cheap for me. And that's probably not your goal. But you should know that it is possible because of those factors. The other thing you got to remember is all those things I mentioned, taking the stuff out, taking out the flooring, taking care of the walls, changing the sheetrock, doing the ductwork, all of those cost money. Now, here's one of the things that a lot of folks don't think about when they're in that as-is space. You added it all up in all your bids and it was $40,000. And you're thinking, all right, well, the house is worth $200. Let's take off 40, shazam, it's worth $160. Not really, because of all that time that you want to save by going as is, you're going to have to give that back to the buyer. If it would be $40,000 off with your invoices, you might offer it for 50 or 60 off so the buyer has a reason to take on the project. Now, how much depends on house by house, neighborhood by neighborhood, market by market. Of course, these are illustrative numbers and it depends on your house and your state, your marketplace. But our job right here in Cabarrus County is to help you figure out the options. So you can say, yes, I'll do the work to capture back that little bit of premium. No, I don't want to do the work. Let the buyer have it. Either way, the house will sell. And that's what your professional is here for, to help you create a plan, connect you to all the right vendors, and make this a little less stressful than it would have been. And by the way, we'll all miss your mom and daddy, and it's pretty rough stuff when they pass. Dealing with a house is an extra stressor. We got you. Just call us.